back to the channel. Today the goal for this weekend really is to get all the suspension done and put on the car. So I've got the rear end is all painted up and ready to assemble. I just need an inch-pounds beam torque wrench I'm waiting on to get the pinion set up properly. So in the meantime, I'm gonna get the front suspension on. So we've got the K-member, A-arms. I'm gonna go through the coilovers quick and I'll show you what I'll do to those. But the K-member and the A-arms are both from Team Z. So this was like for a stock 5-liter kind of, so I just cut the motor mount perches off of it since I'm using the motor and mid plate. But I'll swing this up into the car and get it in the A-arms bolted on, and then we'll get the coilovers together. Alright, one thing, if you're doing this, I just torque the A-arms to 20 foot-pounds because you should really wait to torque the A-arm bolts until you have the whole weight of the car on the front suspension. And then the 4 smaller bolts on the underside I torque to 70 and these ones to 90. So I'm probably going to get the coilovers put together first and get the caster camber plates on the coilovers, then I can put the spindle on. So I'll get started on the coilovers. Alright, for the front suspension, I've got these strange single adjustables with their coilover kit. So the coilover kit has this aluminum sleeve, the 2 nuts, there's a dust cap, the spring itself, and then there's the other cap that has this little roller bearing on the top. I like to cover this whole sleeve in anti-seize because otherwise when you try to break these nuts free, if you're ever adjusting the coilover, they bind up really bad, and this sleeve is aluminum, so it'll bind up and wreck the threads really quick. So just cover it in anti-seize, and then get these 2 nuts put on, and then I can start putting the coilover together. Alright, so the sleeve just goes over the body of the shock, and it has a little tab here that registers down on the bottom of the shock to hold it in place. And then the dust cap can go on. And then the spring. And then there's the spring cap. And then after that, like I said, there's this little roller bearing that goes in between the cap, and there's 2 kind of flat washers or shims. So I'll just put a little bit of grease on the shims, and one goes on the spring cap. Put a little grease on the roller bearing, and that can go on, and then the last shim. And then the little spring cap itself. And that's pretty much it. There's the shims that are these little spacers that go on and kind of located in the little ball that's on the camber plate. So I'll show you those when I get them installed, but that's really all there is to these coilovers. Like I said, they're pretty cheap. I think the whole shock and coilover kit, you could put these together for maybe $400 or $500 for the pair of them, so they're pretty inexpensive. Would be nice to have double adjustables, but you can always upgrade down the road and reuse this coilover kit. So I'll go ahead and get the other one cleaned up and assembled, and then we'll get them put on the car. All right, the front end is all back together. I think the only thing I need to address, I don't know if this is supposed to slip like that. It's the right size on the splines, but it's tightened as much as it can and it still slips. So I gotta look into, I don't know if that's normal or not. But these, I don't know if I'd ever mentioned before, these are 26 by 617 Mickey Thompson Sportsman SRs, I think, and these are actually a DOT tire, so I can run these on the street and at the track. The wheel is a 17 by 4.5, I believe. So I'll just get a second set of tires for the back for when I'm on the street. I'm waiting on a couple parts to come in for the rear end that I need to tool actually for the pinions, so hopefully I get that in the next few days, and then I'll get the rear end together and get it in the car, and then I could start picking away at the engine. So as soon as a part comes in, I'll resume this video and we'll get the rear end assembled. Alright, I got the parts I need now for the rear end, so I can resume on it. The bearing race is already in there. I'll just put a little bit of gear oil on the bearing itself. I was waiting for a torque wrench that read inch pounds, the needle type, so you could set the correct preload on it. So that bearing will go in, then the oil slinger goes in, and then I will pound the seal on. So I got to get a hammer ready, and I'll get all that put on. All right, the seal is on, the yoke is on. That's a chromoly yoke from Strange. For the pinion, there's not really a set torque for the pinion nut. It's more so a reading of how many inch pounds there is, or it takes to turn the pinion to see if the bearing preload is right. So see, it's 8 to 14 inch pounds if they're used bearings, 16 to 24 inch pounds if they're new. So depending on what you have, you kind of want to fall into that range. I just drilled some holes in this piece of angle and put a cap bolt through it there so that the yoke doesn't spin. And I started at 110 foot-pounds, so that's probably not enough, but I'll take this off quick and and check. This was the tool I was waiting on, so it reads inch pounds on the beam. So I'll take this off and check with that and see where I'm at right now. You kind of need to sneak up on it. It gets, or a little bit of torque turns into a lot more force to turn it. So once you get close, it may only take like, you know, 5 or 10 extra foot-pounds to get it in the range that you need it for the right bearing preload. So like I said, I'll start at, I think I actually had this at 120 foot-pounds of torque on the nut. So I'll start there, check it, and then I'll just keep inching up on it until I get the right amount of preload on the pinion bearings, and that should be done. Okay, I've got the pinion nut is torqued down now, and for what I needed between 8 and 14 inch pounds, and I don't know if it'll really show up on here, but it's about 12 when I'm turning it, so it's right perfectly in that range. So now I'll get the other gear, the ring gear in. This is a spool from Strange, a 35 spline spool. The gears in this are 373s, so I'm thinking that should work well with the 6-speed, but I'll really have to see this year how it works, and maybe have to do a gear change. I'm not sure, but yeah, for the time being, I've got the shims that I'll start with, and I'll get this in and torqued, and then I can check the backlash, and then we can put some paint on it and see how the mesh is. But I'll go ahead and get this get the ring gear in and torqued, and we'll go from there. All right, the ring gear is in and it's all torqued down. The torque on these, it really depends where you read. I see anywhere from 90 to 100, so I've got them at 95. And then I've got my magnetic dial on there. So backlash, according to any of the service manuals you read, is about 8 to 12. I also see other ones that show it should be tighter, like 9 to 11, but I think anywhere in that range should be good. So this will clear up. I've got it zeroed out right now, and if I check the backlash, it is at 11. So whether we're going by that 9 to 11 rule or 8 to 12, this is perfectly in range for that. So the backlash is good. Last thing I'll do is put some paint on the ring gear, spin it over a bunch of times, and then we can see what the pattern on the teeth looks like. All right, I put some paint on the diff and got it turned over a bunch of times. I don't have that good the yellow paint that comes with a new gear set when you buy it. I've got this Prussian blue, which is like a marking compound for bearings and stuff like that. And I definitely am not a master at setting up diffs, but I know you just want a pretty even contact pattern across the face of the tooth, and it should be the same thickness across the tooth. You don't want it to start out small and get bigger, or vice versa, start out big and get small, because then that means the pinion depth is wrong from what I understand. So I think this looks good. It's really even across the teeth. It's pretty center, so I am gonna call it good and keep putting things together. I've got a cover and a gasket, and this is one of the covers that has these studs and a nut on it that you can screw down against the cap, and it's just supposed to help keep things more rigid. I don't know if it really works or not, but I've got a new gasket, and then for the axles, I really wanted to put 9-inch ends on this, but I didn't have the tooling to do so. You need a a jig basically that you cut the end off, you put a puck in here, basically like an aluminum spacer, and you put a bar through so that you can weld the end on center. And that tool, the jig, is, I think Mittler Brothers makes one, and it's like $800 US just for the tool. And I already had strange C-clip eliminators on these 35 spline axles, so I didn't go to the 9-inch ends yet. I've had troubles with the C-clip eliminators leaking, so I'm gonna cut some gaskets for them. Well, I already made one new gasket. I've just got to punch the holes out of it. So I had to order a gasket punch, but I've got that now, so I'll punch the holes out of this and probably put a little thin film of RTV on it, and then I can put the axles in, and hopefully they don't leak. And I've got a bunch of other stuff. There's the little chromoly braces that go on the front of the diff. There's I'll have to reinstall this whole relocated upper control arm section from Team Z, so I'll show you what that all looks like. But I'm gonna get this face cleaned up a little more and wipe it all down with acetone and get the bolts cleaned up, and I'll put the cover on first and then get the axles in. Alright, cover is on and torqued. I'm gonna get the axles in now. Like I mentioned, I think these are 35 spline axles from Strange with their C-clip eliminators and disc brake brackets. So I got the surfaces here all cleaned up. I made 2 new gaskets for the axle, so I'm going to put a really thin layer of ultra black on both sides of this gasket to help it hopefully seal up, because these are notorious for leaking. And I'll get both the axles put in, and then I could start putting those relocated upper arms together. Okay, both of the axles are in now, so I can move on to the control arms. This is the whole relocated upper control arm setup from Team Z. They basically just move where the control arm mounts out, however 2 or 3 inches. So instead of having like bushings or anything, there's like a steel puck that fits in there really tight, and then the 2 bars slide together, it bolts through the middle, and then the control arms bolt out on the end. And then I think, I haven't installed these, but I think these must go somewhere like that, and I don't know, add some extra support. And then I also have these 2 rods that will bolt down below the diff and onto these tabs I had welded on. So I'll get the camera set up, and then I'll install these and see how it all fits. Now this is where I think these must fit in one way or the other. Oh yeah, so that'll bolt on there, and then that'll go through that piece down to the little arm I was showing earlier that bolts into the tab. It's long enough to get a nut on it for now, and I'll have to order longer bolts here eventually. Yeah, so that is what it should look like. I'll do the same to the other side and then get everything torqued down. Alright, the whole diff is assembled now. Yeah, these relocated upper arms are on. And then, like I said, I just got to order longer bolts for here. The coilover brackets are on. I still have to order coilovers. I still just have these shock jigs that I made a while ago, so I'll have to order those soon. But yeah, everything on the diff is done, minus I'll have to make some brake lines on here eventually, but I'll do that after, once I have it up in the car. So I'm gonna get this off the table and clean up by the car, and I'll yeah, swing the diff up under the car and get it all bolted in and put the car back on the ground. Alright, the car is back on the ground, so all the suspension is done. Obviously I'll have to get a alignment up front soon, but yeah, everything as far as the suspension pretty well is good to go, except for, like I mentioned, I got to get shocks for the rear, and then I got to run brake lines and all that. But I started working on the engine, but I'm still waiting on the camshaft to come in, and a couple other parts I need, lifters and stuff like that. So next video, I'm gonna get the rear area closed out here, start getting the plastics put in. I got new carpet, all weather stripping to put the sunroof back in, quarter windows, and start putting the interior and figure out get started on the wiring until I get all the stuff back for my engine. So thank you for watching, and follow along for more.